it going, friends? Welcome back to the Church Bird Podcast. This is Pastor Nick, pastor of First Baptist Church of Palos Verdes. And what we talk about here on the Church Bird Podcast is kind of that post-sermon, post-church, post-potluck kind of thoughts that a pastor is often bound to have. So welcome, and I'm happy you're here. And so this week we had an election here in the United States. I'm sure one of you at least heard about it. And what happened, and what has happened will continue to happen for the next 4 years and then beyond that. I'm not particularly interested in talking about that aspect of it. But one thing I've noticed already is my fear is, for those who are inclined to go to church of the more conservative or populist or moderate variety, I do wonder if Donald Trump being elected president will have a negative impact on the church-going population, right? You know, there is this kind of tendency to, now that you've won and things are good, you kind of put church off to the side and you stop forgetting about it and forget that there's a deep need you have, every day for Christ and all of that. So I'm wondering if that's a fear I have, is that people kind of get overcommitted to all the stuff that is going on positively. My fear, and on the flip side of that, is that more progressive or moderate or non-Trump voters, however that may be, or whoever that may be, runs into the same issue as well, that people are less likely to go to church because of, nationalism and all that sort of stuff. And I'm personally very sympathetic to all of this. I can understand, treating things as a monolith, but I would reject it. Not every church is the same, but I think my fear, before I get to kind of the post-sermon thoughts, is whatever happens has happened, and I think the mission of the church is to now recenter, reorientate, and recommit ourselves to the legacy of the gospel of Jesus Christ and to live that out into the world without fear or trepidation. And that means every day we are Christians, not just on election day or election Wednesday or election Thursday, but we are a Christian every day. And so that's kind of my thought and how I've tried to approach the past week or so, is trying to figure things out and go from there, as I'm sure many have. But it's interesting, in preaching through the book of Revelation, specifically chapter 17 and onward, I just opened chapter 18 for our church today. And the angel kind of appears from heaven, and it's a mighty angel, so an angel of some status and significance, and he proclaims in a mighty voice, and he proclaims, "Fallen, fallen is Babylon the Great." And of course, his splendor illuminates, the whole earth, and he's this majestic, magisterial figure. And he proclaims the end of Babylon. And Babylon, for those who know the book of Revelation, is an amalgamation or a consolidation of the political powers of their day, primarily the Roman Empire, but not limited to that. And the proclamation that Babylon is fallen is bewildering in many sense because it still has great power. Indeed, the fall of Babylon won't occur until chapter 19 of Revelation, a whole chapter away. And so I wonder if what John is doing for us and for the church of today and the church of 2,000 years ago is asserting what is and will be, if that makes sense, that Babylon is fallen and will fall, that the ruler of this age is deposed, and the structures and the ordinances and the constructs and the ideologies are still raging on. You might say it as, Satan is the spark that ignited all of this, and while the spark is gone, and we've removed a lot of the oxygen from it, what's left is being burned. So I wonder, for the church and for ministers and for those who are seeking to be faithful followers of King Jesus, that a lot of what we're seeing now in Revelation is this already not yet, that the fall of the principalities and powers is assured, and we see that as corruption is exposed. And that's a neglected aspect of Revelation and popular evangelicalism, that one of God's main weapons in Revelation is revelation. It is his exposure of sin, of corruption, of violence, of idolatry, of sexual immorality. And so that exposure or that revelation has really forced the church to grapple with the state in terms of power, and also with parachurch corruption, also with church corruption. When corruption gets exposed, it's often not Satan doing it, it is God. God exposes the sins of the world to the world, exposes sins so that the righteous might see it and reject it and try to be righteous in spite of it. And I think if we look at the legacy of the church and the legacy, for example, of the United States. There is a lot of corruption at play. And the hope, I think, for the Christian now is, as John's vision was, that once corruption is exposed, what then do you do? Do you try to make it better? Do you try to sanctify it or baptize it? Do you try to capitalize on it? Do you try to retake the power out from the ashes? Or do you recognize that the ashes are ashes and that what was burned was not good and should be left alone to rot? As John and Isaiah say, and this place has become a haunt of demons and of creatures, and that God almost sees fit to essentially say to the sinful nations and the empires that these subhuman demonic entities are more worthy of the land than you are. And that should give the church in the United States a bit of pause when we go seeking after power and seeking after status and structure. I think the church must grapple with that reality. And I tried to do that in my sermon where I point out that no matter what happens, one, God is on the throne, and that's not a trite statement. But it should not make the church complacent about the good things we are called to do, no matter who is elected into public office. The nice thing about being a Christian is that we don't believe in democracy. We believe in King Jesus. And thankfully, the king does not need to vote in order to be installed as ruler. He's only needs to be resurrected. And so my hope in this post-church context is that we see what has happened, and rather than blowing it all up and throwing a fit, we try to be righteous with what has happened. We go, okay, well, this is what happened. There's no going back from this. And the goal now of the church is to live righteously in an unrighteous world. Just because a candidate got elected doesn't mean we're going to be better off per se, or that we're going to be worse off, but worse things and better things may happen, and we need to be aware of that. Secondly, the Church of Jesus Christ needs to avoid getting into bed with the state. And if there's anything clear in the book of Revelation, and I would argue there's plenty clear, it is that when the entities or the kings of the earth and the merchants of the earth get into bed with the great prostitute, unholy fornication happens. And there's a reason why Christians of 2,000 years ago and most Christians of today have rejected, sexual immorality and all that sort of stuff. Even if we've fallen into it or failed, we still recognize that this is a sin and we need to be righteous. And I think for many of us, we need to resist that demonic-esque pull upon us. That rather than seeking to be powerful and to be in charge, we look at the very nature of what it means to have power in the first place, and what should we even do with power, or even should we have it. And that forces us to reckon with that. That we will not be colonized by the state, nor will we get into bed and baptize the state. The Church of Jesus Christ does not exist to sanctify the state. Far from it. We are a prophetic voice for the righteous, for the broken, for the marginalized, and the sinful who are becoming righteous. And I think the church, if she is to have any salt in this world, must remember that calling. We must remember that Jesus Christ is Lord, that he is Lord over all things. From Monday to Monday, from Sunday to Sunday, Jesus is Lord. And I think remembering that will help us kind of grow and continue to be a place of righteousness in a time such as this. And so I'm trying to be neither pessimistic nor triumphalistic. I want the church to remember her sacred first love, and that is Christ, not to get mired in fights online with people we've never met over things that we are usually not very commonly educated on. And I want the church to push as strongly as she can in the direction of righteousness. And that will have a cost. It's very easy, specifically, that once you've won something, to become complacent about yourselves. It's all good now. We don't have to work. We don't have to fight. We don't have to be righteous. And to fall into that sort of trap. On the other side, a concern I have over the past few weeks, and actually a few months, is the rise in kind of neo-patriarchalism. That is, specifically with young men kind of being red-pilled to the point of being poisoned. And you can see the discourse and how they treat women, or how they treat people of counter views, misogynistic language and stuff like that. And I don't use the phrase misogynistic lightly. I'm not that kind of person where everyone who disagrees with me is a misogynist. But I do think that's something we need to really grapple with and recognize that the way of the Church of Jesus Christ is one of neither matriarchy nor patriarchy, but one of mutuality, that women and men, while distinct and different, are uniquely gifted in service for ministry, for leadership, for prophecy, for prayer, and for calling. And God doesn't seem to put a primer or doesn't seem to view either gender in terms of preeminence or authority, but in terms of what we are made to do. And I think the church will have to grapple with that neo-patriarchalism online, where red-pilled young men are really, really, really living it up these days. And I have no problem with people being proud to be a guy. I like being a guy. I'm kind of a big fan of it. And my wife is kind of a big fan of it. But I really want to resist and call the church to a proper ordering of what it means to be men and what it means to be women, that we are not here to be authoritarians over each other or to dehumanize one another, but to recognize that being a man is a gift from God and being a woman is a gift from God. And these gifts taken together constitute the body of Christ. And that together we build the church because we are the church. And that there's no preeminence or priority or partiality or favoritism in the body of Christ. If there is, then we've created a country club, or worse, the state, and that should be brought down as quickly as possible. And so those are some concerns I have. I'm positive in the sense that I think a lot of people will be shaken. I hope a lot of people will have to grapple with this new regime that we'll have for about 4 years. And I hope and pray that whatever happens, that we remember our first love. It's too easy to become satisfied with crumbs when the Lamb has called us to a greater feast. And so thank you for listening to the Church Bird podcast, where we talk post-sermon, post-church, and all of that, and post-fellowship / potluck together. This is Pastor Nick Quince, pastor of the First Baptist Church of Palos Verdes, where we worship at 11 a.m. every Sunday. Come hell or high water, and as I can attest, neither hell nor high water hold the keys to our church. And so may you be blessed. May the Lord comfort you. May the Lord empower you. And we would love to have you at our church at 28 Moccasin Lane, Rolling Hills Estates, California. God bless you. Take care. And until next time, keep the feast.